So maybe to kick things off, I might just ask you to go down the line. For the farmers, introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your farm and what you're doing on it today. Starting with you, Kahn.
Yeah, my name's Kahn. We're just over in just south of Matamata at Taupō. We milk 240 cows there on 77 hectares, about a system 3. Had Halter for 2.5 seasons now, so going into our 3rd full season. And yeah, just me on farm, but yeah, love it really.
Super. Fellow shorts aficionado, I appreciate that as well, keeping the pins out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Jordy?
I'm not so tough, I've got a beanie on. So we have 2 farms on Halter. We initially went into our first little farm of 270 cows 3 years ago. And that was a test pilot to see how we'd sort of overlay it onto the bigger business. Now we've got it across the 270 and also our 630 cows. Both the system 2 to 3 depending. And yeah, it's been an incredible injection into our business and solving a lot of issues that we've had and just an incredible uplift in our people as well on the business, so really enjoying it.
Awesome.
And we're in Taranaki, coastal, so right on the beach here.
Cool, fantastic. Pete?
Hey, so my name's Pete Morgan, and with my wife Anne, we farm Tiamuru, 240 hectares, carved down 520 cows. I've got all the young stock on, which has been part of a strategy over the last sort of 5 years to drop down from system 2 to system 1 and really nudge the end of utilising pasture really well, see how much nitrogen we strip out and how far we could actually support our 3 amazing young staff to kind of develop through. So Halter's been an integral part of that, and with everything very much based around how we grow, utilise and think about pasture.
Awesome. And Toby, not a farmer, but do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your role at Halter?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Toby. My role at Halter is head of pasture, so I lead up our product team, building out all of our pasture management, grazing management features and capabilities. I've been at Halter for coming up 4.5 years, pretty much the entire journey of Halter being on commercial farms. So my team is made up of software engineers, product designers, data scientists, and we work with farmers, understanding what problems we can solve in the pasture space and really building that into the Halter product.
Cool, thank you. And Toby, we might kick things off with you. At Halter, we talk a lot about pasture driving the profitability of the farm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep, sure. So I guess it's probably one of the most common things you'll hear in dairy. Obviously, lots has changed over the decades in the pasture and dairy farming space, but the one thing that hasn't really changed and gets proved out year after year is the relationship with pasture harvest and profitability. Every season, you have conversations with consultants, with farmers, looking at the numbers and just realising how strong that correlation is. So it's obviously become a pretty important part of the Halter product, really central to how we build the system out, and what we're focused on is really trying to help our customers dial in that part of the business, understanding that it's obviously a really, really important part of farms being profitable year on year and also sustainably doing that with all the fluctuations that happen in dairy milk price, supplement price of dirt, all of those things. Really dialing in on the grazing management side is probably the biggest lever that a farm has, at least within their control, to kind of get that equation right. So that's how we think about it.
Yeah, and maybe a follow-up to that, and then keen to hear from the crew as well. Like, in practical terms, how do you think a farmer can achieve that?
Yep. So I guess the original catalyst of Halter was obviously the virtual fencing and shifting part of the product. So obviously on the execution side of grazing management, and that was where we focused a lot of our attention, knowing that that's a really important part, right? Having kind of crude levers to pull in terms of where you're setting up breaks, how, I guess, inflexible that can be for things like rotation length and making adjustments to grazing strategy. That was a really important part and where we focused a lot of our attention up front, and it still remains. I think that control over grazing remains a super important part of the product, but over the past couple of years we've kind of shifted a lot to focus on the data side a lot more. early on in the product journey at Halter, looking at the numbers and seeing just how much pasture measurement was occurring, how much data entry was occurring, and we really saw an opportunity there for us to close the gap, because having a really good execution tool but not really having the inputs to drive how you're using it, we saw that as a massive opportunity. So now we've, focused our attention more on that side as well, really just doubling down on the most important parts: pasture covers, growth rates, rotation lengths, and residual management, and all of the kind of key parts of what makes good pasture farming. We've tried to go end to end and really bring that to the heart of the whole system. So, yeah.
Awesome. Maybe for the farmers now, and we can work our way back from you, Pete, is how, probably the biggest question here today, how do you use Halter on farm to support you with your pasture side of things?
So we were fortunate to actually collar our cows 5 years ago. So we've been a large part of the journey. We've seen the product develop, particularly around the pasture. And it's a crazy journey. I'm sure you guys find the same, where initially the day after cows are collared, they learn really fast within a couple of days. And we start replicating with what we traditionally do with our rotation length, pasture allocation, right from the beginning as to what we were doing prior to Halter. And then it's quite interesting to have it sort of emerge out of that, all the opportunities we have to start being slightly more creative. Creative meaning the things that we were always slightly frustrated, we didn't have enough time, electric fences, data, to be able to have maybe an extra shift in the day, maybe include 2 troughs, maybe find ways of putting pressure on different parts of the paddock when we've got slightly more seedy slopes. The cows can come in and just put a bit of pressure there first, and then give them the rest of the paddock. Things like nutrient transfer. We've actually moved from these camping areas where we'd always have thick pasture, a little bit harder to keep the quality under control, and then we find we would graze that first and then spend more time later. So we allowed those things to sort of emerge out of it, in terms of kind of some of the more subtle things. And then out of that, as Toby said, we found that we wanted to know more. So we wanted to have a deeper understanding of what the feed we had ahead, the dynamics of the rotation and growth rates, and what parts of the farm were performing well and not, the heat maps of where the cows are spending time. And then I'm sure you guys find that we're just forever giving suggestions back, asking questions, and the product itself developing around giving us the flexibility to primarily utilise the pasture better. And then the end of that story is for us making sure that first and foremost that the product is more than paid for every year by just our ability to grow and utilise more feed. That's probably our biggest drive that we have for the business. It's what we should all be doing anyway, making sure we're fully utilising the pasture. So that part's been sort of an interesting journey over the 5 years to get to now, where that seamlessly happens. All the team, without it, we've got the saying of we're now running a more complex system, but it's less complicated than any stage of my whole career, because we can jump straight for what we actually want to do each day, and we just kind of make it happen without having to go. It'd be great to run. We've got 8 mobs at the moment. It'd be great to run those mobs, but most of my time is going to be spent organising the fences and drawing plans and trying to have people for hours out doing that. It's been a wild journey.
Awesome. Jordy?
Or you talk about creativity, and for me, trying to spread that creativity over all of our staff and almost giving them a snapshot into how I see our farm. So when we spend a lot of time on our farm, we have all the creativity in the world, and we think to ourselves, if only I could just take me, times me by 3, and then we could just go out there and execute this plan. I feel as though that this is like a platform to be able to do that. I've got a man who started with me. He was only about 2 years into our working for us when we first got Halter, and he said to me, he feels as though once he got Halter, he could see the farm through my eyes. And I didn't understand that until I sort of have talked to him a little bit further, but he said, I instantly get all the KPIs that you just inherently think about because it's my business. So I live and breathe it. But for someone who's coming and going on wages, albeit we wish they were there with us, it's probably a little bit irresponsible of us thinking that they're going to be as inclusive as we are into the business. So it gives everyone a platform to talk to. It gives KPIs a target to hit, and the gaps are closed. So then you go to the creativity. That's where the time is given. And so for us, I'm actually starting to see my greater team, coming to me about suggestions that I think are wonderful, and they're driven towards profitability, but they don't even realise that. They just see it as, let's make this beast work better. That's only because they're walking around not as zombies anymore, because they're so exhausted putting out 15 fences on a Friday so they get through to Monday.
That's it.
It's because they've got time to think with me as a team to execute the greater plan. And I think you will naturally get profitability in every facet of your business if you give those around you time to think. And that's essentially what it's done for us. And I've just got a great business. Right now I've got one man running the whole thing whilst I'm here highly relaxed, and he's asking me, is there anything we need to be done today? So that's powerful.
Yeah. And you find the motivation that they have and how they think about the business. I mean, I often compare with traditionally how long it would take to get to that level of skill.
That's it. That's what he said to me. So he'd come from 3 contract milking roles and he'd burnt out. And he'd been probably mistreated along the way, and he came back a step. So I've got this guy who's really, really into it. Came to me, burnt out, almost looking for a stepping stone out of the industry. Last week he talked to me about really wanting my contract milking role. It's happened over 4 years. And to me, that's a psychological change that's come through having time to be calm and thinking about it. But now he feels as though he's got a deeper understanding of the goals that we look at as a farm owner, which is maybe a window between contract milkers or share milkers that they miss between farm ownership, and we have different motives. But you come to a platform, you talk about the daily granular numbers of what we're trying to achieve and the profitability that can actually achieve. Like I really try and talk deeply around the numbers daily, the cash, the profitability, and then the things that we can spend on the farm for compliance or whatever, which makes everyone's life wonderful year after year after year. So to me, it's a platform of inclusivity where staff can all be with you all the way. You can be there or you can't be there, and it's such an easy thing to talk to. Start there, and then you work out, you set your plan from there.
Right, thank you. Kahn.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, biggest, we don't have staff on farm, but for me, it's just like unlocked a lot more time for me to focus on that data. You've got that data that's been updated daily, and you can see those things that need to happen, and you've got all the information there, so it's easy for us to be with our allocation, and you can see that you've got, if you don't have time to do your pasture walk that week, it's all just still coming through automatically. So you can just, it takes away all those restraints and allows you to make those changes and improvements just on a daily basis and even throughout a day. So that's been the biggest thing. Yeah, it gives you more time to focus on those other parts of the business as well. Yeah.
And one of the things we do now is it's a funny upending of the way we even think about a lot of the jobs, and some of the least jobs, traditionally putting up a fence and doing things, now are so stimulating, and people find that our staff, when they're coming to us with these epically creative break, which is around this contour now, because we don't even need straight lines, and it's got X troughs, and they've looked at the weather forecast and they've second guessed it, as you'd be doing by yourself.
Yeah.
These last 3 days have been the perfect example of just all these mobs, and the cows are moving as the sun comes up.
Dead right.
Every mob on our farm moves,
Yeah.
and then we go around calmly by ourselves.
Yeah.
But one of the neatest things is the least job, which was putting the fence up, has now become, we just make sure it is actually the single most important job that everyone thinks about, which is, what are you going to give this mob for their next feed of pasture? Is basically the thing.
And they've all got an idea of, like, these are the fats.
Yep.
So they need maintenance. We are trying to achieve half a condition score with this group. So this is our allocation. Do you think we're getting this right, guys? And so they're all referring to energy for mobs. They're referring to weather. Hey, we've got 2 tomorrow breaks because the weather's looking dubious. We might go there or here.
That's right.
That's high level.
Oh, it is. And the idea then of closing the loop so that whatever your outcome you're really after, and gosh, this mob management of the wintertime is so important. And as we get to calving, the springer mob in particular, that linking your action directly to that outcome. So whatever they're doing, they'll think of them, because traditionally they're miles apart. We'd give them an instruction, and maybe the day before, they'd write it down, they'll go out, they've got these electric fences, they give the square meters, they move the cows. That's miles away from them conceptually understanding it. And you're right, they've been driven when they're walking through that mob thinking, is this achieving what my mission is right now for this thing? And it's quite nice to have this, I mean, the person, it's often, we'll make sure, we've got a new guy, 17 years old, just straight into farming. And he's been with us, whatever the date is, 2 weeks, 13 days. And every day he's been out with one of us, draw the brake, explain why, just as you do, and have the cows move. And he is just like, at that time, he is completely switched on. Got all the mobs. He feels like he's in the driving seat of the whole business. We liken it to, yep, he is. We're in the passenger seat with a hand on the handbrake, like teaching my daughters to drive. It's a cool thing to do for them, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. And it's, I think that we are, like, it will develop, like, even without staff, just think one day when you've got a son or a daughter that wants to come in. I've taken Tasman, my daughter, running around out on at calving time last year. We jumped in the truck, we went and had a look at the calvers. First thing I do is, can you open up the app, hon? So she opens up the app, and I said, right, go and find the springers. So she reads it, springers, right, Dad, they're down by the rugby club. Yep, keep going. We find it, and then I said, right, your job is to type in anything that's carved, turn it into a freshly carved for me. And so we do all of that, and she's right into it. And then as soon as we jumped back in the truck, I said, right, now we're up to do the colostrums. So she's 8 years old, and she's doing that with me, and now she's 9. Now you're 9. But the includes, like, if you want to talk about bringing up a whole generation of included young enthusiastic people who already are looking at the platform in which we're running our businesses. I mean, this has been a big gap. People have 10 years ago, you'd almost avoid a conversation if you were down in Queenstown to say you were a farmer because you didn't want to be grilled about what you were doing. We should be propagating these kids, getting them right into it.
Totally.
So they're frothing to be a part of our businesses. But wonderful businesses that we can change them and constantly invest in them. And this is where it begins.
Yeah. First, I think a round of applause for Tasman as well, in terms of all the work she's doing there. I am mindful that a question about pasture led to some big discussions around the future of farming and being able to spend more time with kids and all of that type of thing as well. And I think that's the power of what we're seeing here. Maybe Toby, because I know we've got some new Halter folks in the room, some new Halter farmers in the room. We've got some prospects. Like, when we're saying that this unlocks all of this, what does it actually mean? Like, what power is kind of in your hand to be able to make these decisions and make your life better?
Yeah, really good, broad question. I think I'll start by saying one, like, tension or challenge we've had in the past is where Halter's role is in terms of just being a pure tool unlock that you put in the hands of a farmer versus something that is very prescriptive or proactive and almost kind of tells a farmer what should happen. And I think the sweet spot that they're in at the moment is a little bit of both, but the magic really being this idea of control and flexibility at the same time. And I think that what that actually means is very different on every farm and every system, as these guys have just attested to. But the way I like to think about it is the 80% or 90% of what makes good pasture management comes down to a bunch of pretty narrow decisions. There's not that many things that you can do or that have a big impact. And as I said, Halter's very focused on those jobs. So if you're Pete, for example, and you've actually taken some physical fences out, the way that you get more out of your pasture is by being more flexible, working with the land, grazing, based on the complexities of what you're dealing with. Other farms, it might just be, hey, we've got a really big operation, we've got lots of staff that we're relying on, and the ability to kind of ensure that every decision that's made is really accurate is super challenging. So I have a customer that I spoke to not that long ago in Canterbury who said the most powerful feature for me is just the fact that I can set a rotation length target and then see every single day if the team are hitting it, which to my mind I'm like, shit, we could simplify this product a lot more if that's where all the value comes from. Whereas that is not necessarily a problem for another farm, and for them it's more, hey, we have this varied contour and we really struggle to get performance and good quality feed out of these parts of the farm, and now with Halter we've got the ability to control that. So I know that's not like a single silver bullet answer, but I think the way that I like to bring it back to is if you're running a farm and you're thinking, where are the areas of my business that I want to have more control, but also flexibility, like not being prescriptive, and what that looks like is slightly different for every system, but all of it focuses in on the key parts that make the flywheel spin, I guess, in terms of pasture. So yeah.
And we were talking before about some of the core features of what that feels like, and sort of answering your question, you were talking to me about about how central control is to how we think about farming and how we manage the pastures. And just conceptually, I think that's sort of quite profound. Because the thing is, as farmers, we get used to the price of doing business is not being in control. You don't see where your cows are, you don't know exactly how they got on last night in the rain, you know exactly how much feed's there, not quite in touch with how much feed I've got ahead as we're going faster and faster. And if you ever want to know what it's like to, how important it is to be in control and have this visibility, you just talk to someone who's not got control. And we all remember what that's like.
Oh yeah.
It's quite profound, isn't it? And when you're running a sole person operation and you just have to run faster and faster, you can't delegate like we can.
Yeah, and
especially like in terms of like for me, if like a lot can change in a week, and if you haven't got time, if you miss something that week, then it just throws you out completely. So like
And
with
then it's just you.
and it's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially pasture. Like in the spring, it gets away, and it can slow down just as quick as well, and then you can run yourself short. But when you've got that data and it's changed every day, it's really easy to make those accurate decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to maybe walk through, I guess, some practical examples of that to your point around doing the farm walk is, the most important job on farm, you could argue, but it's often the one that slips down the list a few times when you get busy. We have customers who use obviously our predictive models and our pasture data, but also see a weekly farm walk as a super critical part of the business. Boots on the ground, checking troughs, actually seeing what's going on the paddocks. But if for whatever reason you get hit by a curveball and that job does have to drop down the list, that data is still there. Halter's still working in the background to keep that information flowing in, which means that you don't get caught short trying to make a decision based on 2-week-old data. So that's kind of up at the, data entry side. And then growth rates flow from that. Again, we had a spot before Christmas in the South Island where everyone had gone away for a few days around Christmas. Temperatures were good, got a good dump of rain, grass took off. And a lot of our customers were talking to me saying, hey, I had a sneaking suspicion that we were probably going to have a lot of feed on hand when we got home from the lake. But I could, I guess, get an inside scoop on exactly what that was looking like before I got back, and making adjustments with the team on the ground as to the slight tweaks and strategy that needed to happen, rather than at that time of year you might just be sitting on a 40-day round as standard and being able to say, hey, let's speed that up by a few days, let's push some more feed in here in terms of how much pasture we're offering, and even think about, should we be cutting silage, even though that wasn't really on the agenda when we head off to the lake house. So little things like that, I guess, really compound positively, and if you get it wrong, compound negatively. And it's a lot of those little 2 days here, 2 days here decisions that can either put you in a fantastic spot or put you in a really challenging spot. And I guess coming back to that idea of control, that's why it's a word I like to use to describe what we're trying to achieve.
And central control for us is just this link that we think about all the time with Halter, but also with all of our parts of our business, where we have this incredibly detailed information that intimately understands, or for us, completely hands-off with pasture and mating, understands all the complexities of our paddock where the feed is we can get from that the insights. So the front end of what you've created, I'm sure you guys find with our targets that we can just see, and all our staff as they're drawing rates can see, particularly rotation length. But the biggest game changer part is actually the third part, which is turning it into action. Whatever we see, we can go, right, we've had a strategy meeting, work out what the plan is. Someone will take 30 seconds to draw each break, move the cows, and we've got, I mean, think of the last 20 years where all of us have had lots of data on finance, on everything else, and more of that doesn't necessarily help. And even having an advisor or information giving you what you should be doing is good, unless you can't do it, and then it's just frustrating. We can just turn everything into action, whatever it is. And that part, in terms of control, allows you to be away and just relax, knowing that whatever happens, you can actually look at the phone, you can just, from the field days, from overseas, anywhere, support your staff, or actually turn something into action yourself. It's a cool feeling as a farmer. You certainly sleep better at night. Even something as simple, just knowing where all your cows are and exactly how many are in each mob, is the first thing that I remember striking me. Just going, oh my God, counting rows and remembering which cows I've skipped and whatever, and how many cows are in each mob for feeding. That part's very cool.
Probably last biggish question from me, and then keen to get some questions from the room as well. You know, when you look over the next, say, 6 to 12 months, what are you hoping to achieve? I think especially when it comes to pasture, but can be broader than that as well. And probably how do you see Halter helping you with that as well? So maybe kicking things off with you, Kahn.
So winter and early spring can be pretty tough sometimes, and especially managing that grass, especially when the pressure is definitely going to come on. I think historically, going back to my old system pre-Halter, it was always round length focused instead of matching the grass and what we were growing and what we had in front of us. So, you know, you'd progressively get faster through calving, and then you'd be trying to hold around, and then all of a sudden you're speeding up 10 days at a time and getting faster and faster. Whereas now, like for us, we used to do that, and then we'd be trying to get spring, like summer crops in the ground, and then we'd be going into mating. And if pasture growth and growth rates had slowed, all of a sudden we can sometimes find ourselves in a pinch at a real critical time of the year. But now we can just progressively match that grass as it grows, and the growth rates speed up, and you know, over the course of 3 weeks we can slowly just get faster and faster, and it's not those big changes anymore. And so the cows are always now, you know, it's more consistent for the cows especially. So that's what I like about it, and it's been a big change to our system especially.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think that there is always a negotiation for us between production and fertility. We don't have one without the other. And for us, I think learning a lot along this journey with Halter, with free consultation around results, and then retrospectively looking back at what we did, and then trying to change things for better tangible results for next year will be my focus. So we've hit what I would say is our target 6-week in calve rate, but we also spent some time with I think it's Ben Shadwick or Shadwick, and I came out of fertility last year, and I was disappointed with some age groups, and I had some questions, and I was being super critical of myself. So he went through all fertility focus going back 4 years with me, broke age groups down, broke holes, made changes. So now I've got a really focus on just what we are going to do with a specific age group, and we start now. Again, it comes down to having time and having it in my face, knowing where they are, what they are, and everyone knowing what we're trying to achieve to ultimately get a better fertility focus. So it's crazy to think we want good fertility, but yet sometimes that can sacrifice what seems as though profitability, but in turn we don't have a business without it. So I'm probably focusing on fertility now more than I've ever had, because I feel as though I have the time to think about it. You know, post-calving, cycling numbers, etc. These are the sorts of things that I will look at far earlier this coming season than I've ever done and I'm hoping in turn we'll get a better result for it. And at least the numbers are the numbers. You can't run away from them. It's up to you whether or not you do something about them.
Awesome. And the action for that starts really upstream.
It's crazy.
Right. Basically, we start thinking about it in February.
Yeah.
Who we're going to dry off, what mobs we're going to have, what body condition score targets, going through that fertility focus and turning again it into action. So what do we need to do in terms of feeding and what mobs need looking at? For us, the main focus, Andrew, would be, we've talked about it quite a bit, is we're all used to the volatility we'll get in grass growth, but particularly milk production. Because at the end, the great thing about dairy farming is you get this immediate feedback of what you're doing well and what you're not. And we know that volatility will be, to a degree, influenced by weather and everything else. But we also know that the more consistent our cows are fed, the better they will perform. And in the past, the only way to do that was usually to feed better. And like just allocate more and more feed, but then you'd be sacrificing residuals and you'd lose control. So it kind of felt like you either had really volatile, had hard on the pasture, or liberal, cows fed well, use supplement, and then end up sacrificing residual and substitution and everything else. So our aim this year, and we did a good job last year, was to make sure every day that every mob got fed exactly what they needed to actually have the right intakes by being creative with how we allocate multiple moves in the day, which is much easier with bigger paddocks, and taking surpluses out, which we tend to identify, and we'll take parts of these paddocks out now because the paddocks are bigger, so we'll just identify areas where high fertility or easier for the contractor to go, and we'll have parts taken out and we just skip, but far more flexible around that, with the aim of the two main things, which is we still have the targets that Toby's built in that we're trying to make sure we stick in. So the zone for average pasture cover for our rotation lengths and our residuals, and we will get to those targets. But traditionally you'd get there by being on this fixed rotation, and you would get to the target by allocating the same area, say day paddock, night paddock, and the cows would go up and down according to what the weather and the utilisation and the pasture quality. Now we do the opposite. We still get to the target, but it's the allocation each day and each break that might go up and down and bigger area and unusual paddocks. So the allocation areas will be varying, but the girls stay consistent. So we have the cows at the centre of all of that, and our allocation, we have this flexibility to both feed them right and still stay on target, which is this great this nice middle ground where we just know we're achieving it. So our aim is to do that this season. And the cool thing is, it's love when your staff are actually proud of the things that you are. So they'll come onto farm and they look at our beautiful cows because there's far less variation in body condition score when you do this. And look at these pre-grazing covers, nice and even. But I like it when they say, oh no, come and let me show you what our most proud thing is. You'll be standing there, look at this paddock that was grazed maybe 5 days ago. This perfectly even residual. You spent 3 days in it with all these breaks and muddy weather and whatever, heavy rain, no pugging, and they know that if you're getting those residuals right and even all the time, that those paddocks will turn up as the right pre-grazing cover. You will have your right average pasture cover and you'll be able to feed the cows right. So you know they've got the action end of all that focus right, which is a very cool thing to do, and it is kind of cool. Yeah, we all know what the opposite looks like as well. So anyway, that's our focus. What are you going to focus on?
Good question. I think for us, from a product perspective, we over the past 3 years have gone pretty comprehensive across everything from pasture covers to feed budgeting, and I think for us the focus is really coming back into that core area of data accuracy and making the data something that's extremely usable and easy to turn into action to the points that we've talked about today. So what that means, we are pretty lucky that AI and machine learning are moving at a pretty rapid pace, and we're obviously jumping on the back of that. So there's lots of really cool opportunities in our pasture cover and growth rate models to make some really cool steps forward there. So that's been a focus since we released those products, two or so years ago now, and will continue to be a massive focus going forward. And then the other side is, as I said, the visualization of that. So how do we bring the data even more and more and more granular, right? We're still using the paddock as a frame of reference a lot. It's still the most familiar unit of reference for farmers, but as fences start to come out, or even just varied topography and varied fertility within a paddock, we have an opportunity to start actually visualizing variations in cover and variations in growth within paddocks, and I guess making the data a lot more usable to, again, saying the word control, really manage the farm the way that it needs to be managed, rather than just the, I guess, default that most farms are used to. So that's on the dairy side, and I know we've spoken about dairy primarily, but there's a lot of really cool stuff we're working on across our beef offering as well, and how we can start to really, I guess, drill down into the value of the pasture management and grazing side for our beef farmers as well as our dairy farmers. So some cool opportunities there as well. So yeah, big team, fully focused on continuing to try and drive pasture management forward.
Great. Team, any questions from the floor? Tozzy?
What are those beef opportunities?
Really good question.
Just to repeat for the phone, just in case they didn't hear for recording, what are those beef opportunities?
Yeah. So I guess we're looking at what types of data we can start pulling. Obviously, in the dairy side, we have these models that are looking at covers and growth rates. There's no reason in principle why we can't do the same thing on the beef side. So that's a big area of opportunity and focus for us. Because at the moment, I guess we're wanting to build those same feedback loops of, here's what we're seeing, here's how grazing is occurring, and again, afterwards, here's what we're observing again, and start to build, I guess, a better understanding of pasture growth and utilisation and grazing pressure and all of those kinds of things. So still very much watch this space, but we know that working with our early beef customers, there's a lot of opportunities there, and we're getting a lot of really useful feedback on how they're connecting the dots manually. And the question for us is, how do we actually turn that into a product? So I know that's probably not a super detailed answer for you, but yeah, there's lots of things that we're looking at.
Any other questions, team?
Are you working on products for calves?
Good question. I'm probably not the best person to answer that, but
I guess it's possible. We collar ours from 12 months, so we've got all our young stock on, and so for that full second year, we have ours collared. It's extraordinary, not just for pasture management, but certainly for making sure they're fed evenly. Having them on farm, it gives us the flexibility to feed them really well, but do a job as well. Obviously, the insights to their health and mating has been incredible, and they hit the ground at 2 years old, just absolute experts when it comes to joining the herd.
Great. Anything else, team?
On the beef side, we've always known that dairy was a great place to start. We've got the intensity, we've got the data, we've got the cash flow to actually make sure we can get the returns, and we can really turn up the dial on pasture utilisation and really make it work. But if we're turning up the dial that much and really getting a good return, the potential we have always known as dairy farmers was, the big one was actually going to be in beef as well. Because you guys have just so much more potential with all the challenges of terrain and control and that. It's huge here and overseas. And that's without even getting into all the environmental impact that by having that degree of control.
Cool. And then just to note as well, if folks do have questions for any of the panel, for Toby, we've also got Andy at the back as well, who's our head of product and engineering. So any of those tricky ones, let us know, and we can go deep on this stuff afterwards as well. Any last questions, folks? Cool. Too easy. I think we've done well today. I think been a really great covering of pasture, but then I think beyond in terms of what pasture and profitability really allows. I wanted to say a huge thank you to our panelists. Folks, so great to have you here and to hear so genuinely your stories and your journeys with Halter, but then much more about what it means for you as a farmer as well. So thank you very much to you all. For everyone else as well, we're here today, tomorrow, of course, as well. A lot of Halter folks around if you do want to have any chats. Still a lot of food to go, coffees all day as well, and from 12 o'clock as well, we've got the bar open and lunch here too, so feel free to come back to continue those chats too. But thank you very much, team. Chat to you soon.